Daniel, what is a key person of influence and why is that important for freelancers?
Tim, in every industry there are what I call key people of influence. And it's the small percentage of people who earn more money, have more fun, and have a bigger voice in the industry. So a key person of influence, if we were to think of the accounting industry or medical industry or any industry across the world, you're going to find that there's this small group of people who the media would turn to if they needed a comment, whose names would come up in conversation if people were talking about that particular industry. Now, it's really important to position yourself as a key person of influence in your industry, because when we look at the income distribution of any industry, you'll find that it's the top 10% of people who earn something like 80% of the income in that particular industry. So it's well worth moving yourself into that into that category. Each person needs to decide what is the micro niche that they can definitely become a key person of influence in. Now, it doesn't mean that you're always going to be just that micro niche. You'll probably grow. But I find that when I go networking, I meet people who attempt to be very broad at what they do, and being broad actually turns you off working with them. So if someone says to you, I'm a business coach and I help people and I can help anyone at all, and it doesn't matter what size business or even individuals, and I also do some property investing, and I also do some multi-level marketing, and I also do some IT work, the more they say, the less you're interested to work with them. If someone turns around and says, all I do is I do sales training for IT professionals in Oxford, you go, oh, wow, okay, that's very niche. I bet you're number one at that. So instantly they come across with a lot more gravitas and credibility. So there are 5 things that must be done in order if you want to become a key person of influence. So the first thing that you need to...
Hi, Colette. Welcome to National Freelancers Day.
Hi there. How are you doing? You may have heard the phrase, when it comes to marketing, it's all about going where the bodies are. And it's really the same principle with social media, except that it's on steroids. There's a massive amount of people. So, for instance, Facebook has between 700 and 750 million users, and they do 700 billion minutes a month of looking at Facebook content. So there's an awful lot of people there that you could possibly connect with as a business. You only need a tiniest fraction of these people inside your tent, inside your marketing and networking circle, and some great things start to happen. In terms of some of the things that have happened with social media for me, I thought I'd explain some of the business opportunities that have come up, and also some of the off-the-wall, completely different, lifestyle opportunities that also came my way. A company in the city said, oh, crikey, we need somebody to run some usability studies. Are there any freelance usability people there? So I wrote back and said yes. And I ended up meeting them, and they said, can you start in a couple of days? And I said, yeah, not a problem. And that turned into a £14,000 order over the course of a year. They got me to run several studies for them. So I ended up working on the independent website, which was nice. It was also Metro, and Delia Smith was using the same functionality. So from a profile point of view, it was really good for me to be working on these high-end websites. And that all came out through Twitter, and it was just, 2 or 3 days a month. Every now and again, and it turned into an order of that size. I'm just going to share a few key tips for people so that they can get the most out of it and avoid any of the common pitfalls.
I've got quite strong views about really when websites go commercially wrong. I call it digital desert syndrome. The typical experience is that after various months, you get your new site live. And it's taken a lot of time to get it to that point. You start with a lot of optimism about the difference that the website is going to make in terms of attracting and winning contracts. And thereafter, over time, I think the once proud owner generally sort of comes to hope that no one ever visits the site again because it goes out of date, it gets a bit embarrassing. So that to me is digital desert syndrome. And the key message is it doesn't have to be like that. And as with all business decisions, really the starting point is clarity of purpose. The fundamental purpose of a website is to make money, help you make money. And I think it can do that in 4 ways. First thing a website does is it makes your personal brand stand out from your competitors. Secondly, it can be the most fabulous platform for managing relationships with people like agencies, clients, peers, in other words, the people who could give you a contract. Thirdly, and with certain very strong caveats that I'll come to, it can be a sales channel in its own right. And the other thing which is often overlooked is that if you plug in some technology, it's actually you can actually sort of automate some of the rather annoying, joyless and time-consuming things that we will have to do as freelancers. I'll come to that as well.
There are some definite challenges to writing CVs for the freelance and contract market, and we're going to talk people through a alternative framework today, which I think will work beautifully for those people in that situation. So what are those challenges? Well, you know, if a contractor has been contracting for some time, they'll probably have done quite a lot of jobs. Yeah. And if they list every one, they're going to end up with a 6-page monster. So that's one of the major issues. Another thing is what I call last job syndrome. You know, imagine the scenario, you've been a contractor for some time, you've had a lot of real nice meaty contracts that are completely in line with your area of speciality, and then all of a sudden you get a lean couple of months and someone comes along and says, you know, would you mind just delivering this little project for us? It's a more junior job than what you're used to, but it's going to be a little bit of cash coming in for the next 3 months. Will you do it? The average person's probably going to say, yeah, okay. But all of a sudden, they get to writing their CV at the end of the contract, and this more junior or ill-aligned piece of work is sitting at the top of the CV. It kind of shapes the way people feel about that individual. But there are ways around it, so don't panic just yet. And another issue is that you've got a scenario where something you did 3 years ago feels absolutely spot on, you know, really demonstrates that you've got the ability to do that particular piece of work. However, it's on page 4. But if you put it all together, there's 3 or 4 different strands to their expertise there. Now, how do you get that into one CV without sort of producing too much of a generic document that really pictures you as a sort of jack of all trades and master of none? So that's another major issue. But you know, we have some ways of getting around all of those challenges, and that's obviously what we're going to cover in today's presentation. The solution that we recommend is what we call the case study portfolio framework or approach. And what it revolves around is getting completely away from the chronological CV.